All right, guys and gals, here we go. This is going to be the final day of our Summerslam 2021 vlog. Hopefully you've enjoyed this director's cut with the alternative commentary. If you're on the playlist now, this would be video number 6, day 5, Summerslam 2021 vlog, and here we go. So yeah, SummerSlam was great, and it's always tough when the next day you are starting to head home. That's tough. It's a bit of a bummer, and I do remember we were trying to see if it was possible to squeeze another day out of this and potentially extend our stay. Reason being, there were no flights getting out of Vegas back to New York. They were all completely booked. Again, we had a last-minute vibe in terms of getting the trip booked. So the only way for us to do this was to rent a car and then drive to Arizona, and from Arizona come back and go fly to Arizona back home. So it was a really tough day, but great day starting off. We went to the hotel pool. So you see my wife and my mom out there really enjoying that. That was great for them. And then here we are, Caesar's Palace, and I am inside taking everything in, talking about WrestleMania 9. It's something I really wanted to do. Didn't get to do the first time I went to Vegas. So seeing everything outside looking pretty similar to like a lot of the lead up to WrestleMania 9, where they did Superstars in Caesar's Palace, and Macho Man Randy Savage went to the shops, and yeah, it was cool. It was cool to be there for that and kind of see that so much of it is similar. And I'm here as we're walking around the building. I'm trying to scope out where they actually did the WrestleMania itself, because the WrestleMania 9 itself took place in a parking lot. So we're walking around outside now, and this is really just taking everything in here. Our final day, and I remember I reached out to my boss and I said, in Vegas, they're not letting us get out of Vegas. Any chance I could take an extra day off and come back on Monday, because I was still working on site at the time. If you could ever not work on site, take that opportunity for this very reason. She said, no, we're going to need you back on site the next day. I get it to a certain extent, but I don't to another extent. Wouldn't have really been that big a deal for to allow an extra day. I understand that was the decision she made. It's fine. And so we had to go take a drive all the way from 4 hours from Vegas to Arizona to take a flight back home. And I'm getting nostalgic. And I'm even getting nostalgic thinking about it now. But at the end of this video, I'm getting nostalgic. Not sure why I thought it was great to get a shot of the bathroom. But I'm talking about, what a great trip it was. And it really was. This is just an amazing trip. Once in a lifetime trip to go with my mother, as well with my wife, and at the time my 1-year-old. So just so cool, so much fun. And before we left, we did check out the 7 Magic Mountains. This was something that was up in Vegas for a limited time, and we were able to go and check that out. My wife's very excited. As you can see, she's taking tons of photos. This was something she really wanted to do. There's a little brief scene of a fire. Not sure what that was about. I think we had to go back to the M&M store in order to get like our personalized M&Ms or something. So we were walking back over there because it was like, it took a day to get that ready for us. So we were going back to pick those up. And I think what happened was that's when you saw that a building right next to it was on fire, but it ended up being, pretty much put out right away. Nobody remotely stopped their day because of the fire. I don't think anybody even thought about stopping the day. You see everyone just kind of out and about doing their thing. But my wife's a huge fan of photos, different photo ops. So Magic Mountains was very cool. I was glad we were able to go and see that. My daughter was able to get out, walk around for a bit as well. And they are a very, very cool deal. And you can see my wife back there by one of the mountains posing for a photo. And I'm kind of walking around seeing everything. It was very hot. I mean, you look at this. This is right in the desert in Vegas, but a cool deal. Always like to squeeze like one last little excursion in before you leave. And for me, I think this was one of the things I wanted to do. There's my mom underneath one of the mountains too. I don't think she was as big of a fan of the idea of checking these out, but at the same time, it was fun. It was cool. It was a good deal, and I enjoyed it and was glad that we were able to kind of take everything in. Yeah, so now taking the video of us, welcome to Arizona. This was a brutal flight. I mean, I remember not only was it a brutal flight, but by the time we ended up, because remember, they're 3 hours behind us. So I think our flight ended up getting us back into New York, like right in the middle of the night. And it was actually like 6 a.m. our time. That said, my wife and I are thrilled. You can see us smiling as the video ended. But Yeah, it was rough. I mean, by the time we got there, it was literally like 6 a.m. and I pretty much had to just put on my suit and out the door I went and hit the road to go to Connecticut. It was terrible. It was a really tough day to get through. It was an unfortunate situation that we couldn't get any flights leaving Vegas, and a last minute type deal that we couldn't do that. So it was hard. It was really difficult. I will say this from a perspective of being in management. If somebody is in a tough situation like that, my advice would always be, if that employee, if you want that employee to feel valued, if you want that employee to have a little loyalty to the company, if they're calling you and asking you for one extra day and telling you they're in a tough spot, let them have the extra day. It's not going to mean that much to you. And at the same time, they will be willing to do so much more for the company. If you stand on your laurels and say, hey, come on in, they're going to go look for a place that values them a little bit more. So that's me on my soapbox, but an incredible trip to wrestle at SummerSlam 2021. SummerSlam is, in my opinion, graduated to such heights now at this stage. I think this year you're kind of seeing that it's even bigger than ever. You could probably even fit another 5 matches on there because of everything they've done. So I do think SummerSlam will graduate to a 2-day event. I think that'll happen sooner rather than later. Back then, though, I will say, being back and seeing wrestling for the first time in so long, when it really felt like, are we ever going to be able to get out of this thing? I mean, remember this pandemic was like well over a year. So being able to do it was great. It was nerve-wracking, I will say. First time really kind of being in such a large place. But at the same time, thankfully, everyone got out okay. We ended up getting back home. And my wife and I went on a bit of a wrestling tear here at this point. I think like 2 weeks later, we were at MSG for SmackDown on 9/11. And you can go check out that video. I have that vlog in the archives as well. And then the next couple of weeks, we were over at Grand Slam for AEW right at the Arthur Ashe Stadium here in Queens. So it was a lot of wrestling. I think my wife knew that I was very much missing it, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. I love these wrestling trips, particularly love this one because it's such a trip where you think about it, you're going because there's a wrestling show, but instead of it just being a wrestling show, we turned it into a 5-day event. I got to go on a trip not only with my family and my family, I guess my wife and my daughter, but I was able to bring my mom and allow her to see the madness and the insanity that is everything that goes into being a wrestling event. And I remember her just loving it and her being like, well, wait a minute, why are we leaving the Superstore and not going and watching all these podcasts? Like, isn't this what you do? This is what it is. And I had to explain to her, it's not exactly what we do. A lot of wrestling fans I know do that. I get it. I love that portion of it. I love that idea of going there and taking in as much wrestling as you can possibly get. But when you're balancing out with going on a trip with your family, it's also you want to experience the city. We're not in Vegas very often. We haven't been back since. I'd love to go back. It's so much fun. Hopefully we'll be able to here in the not too distant future. And I hope WWE goes back in the not too distant future. Remember at SummerSlam 2021, they announced that they were going to do Money in the Bank over 4th of July weekend the next year at Allegiant Stadium. They ended up moving out of Allegiant Stadium to the MGM Grand, I believe it was. MGM Grand Theater, perhaps, because of Arena, rather. Because of the fact that Cody Rhodes got hurt. And that was kind of their big deal, was Cody's going to get the Money in the Bank and probably go on to challenge Roman at SummerSlam that year. Instead, Cody got hurt. They go back to Roman versus Brock, and then Cody ends up winning the Rumble. So it's a shame they didn't do that. I do hope they go back to Vegas at some point, because that was the same weekend as the Pacquiao fight, and I'm telling you, there was about as many people there, if not many, many more people there for SummerSlam at such a large stadium than there was for Pacquiao, and it felt like Vegas just embraced all things WWE. It was a very fun weekend. One of my favorite trips I've ever been on, and I'm glad we were able to relive this together. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoy videos like this. If you do, I did one of these with my WrestleMania 33 vlog with my buddy Steve, celebrating the 5 years of that trip last year. Check that out in the archives, and I'll do some more of these. Rather, I'd love to do the experience videos, but if I don't get a chance to do them, I think a fun way to do them is going back and reliving some of these vlogs this way, watching them together and rewatching them, and inviting you, of course, as always, to watch along right here on Watch Along Wrestling. Until then, everybody, keep it locked right here. So much SummerSlam content coming your way. It's SummerSlam week, the biggest party of the summer. I will see y'all in the next video.